Good evening and welcome. My name is Vicki Studi. I'm the president of the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce. Committed to business for you, the Chamber unites businesses by influencing public policy, providing professional development and networking opportunities, and encouraging economic development. Representing more than 500 members in the area, your chamber is the influential voice to champion economic growth for business. As citizens of this great community and nation, we have the right to cast our vote each November for individuals that represent our interests. The leaders you elect make the decisions that affect you directly: your job, healthcare, energy costs, security, and more. Tonight's candidate forum is just one opportunity to educate and engage voters. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's timekeeper, Mark Loftus. Mark is the Economic Development Director at Dakota Electric Association and will serve as the Chamber's chair of the board in about 10 days or so, I guess. I'd like to go over the rules for this evening. All seats have been pre-assigned in a predetermined order. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for opening comments. Mark will hold a yellow card indicating when each candidate has 15 seconds remaining. He will hold a red stop card when time is up. If you do not stop when the red card is held, a bell will ring and you will be cut off from your comments. We'd like to avoid using the bell, so your consideration to stop would be appreciated. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. A candidate, of course, can use less than 1 minute when answering, but cannot exceed that time. Time starts upon the completion of the questions. The order of candidates to answer the questions will alternate within each race this evening, as well within each candidate. Due to time limitations and for the replay to the show, we may have to decrease the amount of time for the final question so that we can get closing comments in within the hour allotted. For those of you in tonight's audience, if you have a question you would like to ask, please complete a note card located at the back table of the room and bring it up here. We may not have time to address all of your questions, but we'll do our best within our time frame. And then finally, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing statements. This evening, we will hear from candidates running in Minnesota's Legislative District 51, which covers the communities of Eagan and Burnsville. It is my pleasure to introduce our candidates. In Senate District 51, we have incumbent Jim Carlson, along with his opponent, Victor Lake. Our candidates in House 51A include Brad Gerten and incumbent Sandra Mason. And finally, running in House District 51B, please welcome incumbent Lori Halverson, along with Pat Hammond. Thank you all for being here this evening. As we start our opening comments, please include why you are running for elected office, and we will start this evening with Victor Lake.
Absolutely. Do I have to turn my...
You're all set.
My name is Victor Lake, and I'm running for state senate. So first off, I want to give thanks to the Dakota Regional for putting this up, and I really appreciate this. This is a good avenue to get our message out. I came to this great country as an immigrant from the former Soviet Union, 1997. Came for freedom and opportunity. I love this country. I love this state. Been here since we came. I own a small business now. I own a flooring company and I have my builder's license. And I am running for office because our interests are currently not represented. The American dream that my family came here for and that we realized has been disappearing in our district due to high taxes and the mess with the health care. So I am running to represent all the people in this district, every person. And I thank you for being here and watching online.
Jim Carlson, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I too want to thank the Chamber for putting on this forum. I'm State Senator Jim Carlson. I've been representing this district for the last 8 out of the 10 years since 2006. I grew up right down the street here on Pilot Knob Road. 4350 Pilot Knob Road was our address when I was on the farm with my family. We have a history here of about 100 years. My great-grandfather came here. He was a Nelson, but my grandfather was a Carlson. And so we've had the American dream here. We've built our name here. We built houses. We built, I see Representative Wardlow's in the audience. He lives in what was our former farm. We've had a lot of influence in the area here. And I'm retired from 3M. I'm an engineer. And what I wanted to do is give back to my community. I've had a very good experience here in Dakota County and Egan, and I want to give back. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, we'll go to you next.
Hi. Brad Gerten, running for Minnesota House. That's why we're here. I'm running to keep the interests of those of us in Burnsville and Egan in mind at the legislature. I grew up in Burnsville, graduated from Burnsville High School, lived here most of my life. When I was ready to buy a house, I decided Burnsville. No other place to be, although I do love the city of Egan as well. Live very close to the border. I'm a 22-year military veteran. I served on active duty, and then most of my career is in the National Guard. I deployed to Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and finally hung up the boots just over 2 years ago. I'm currently a probation officer with Hennepin County. Been doing that for 4 years, and I've worked with the county for almost 12 years now. I'm on the Burnsville Economic Development Commission, and in my free time, I would usually do air quotes for that, I umpire baseball and softball at the high school and youth level, and I also referee hockey at those same levels.
Thank you. Sandra?
Thank you. I'm Sandra Mason, and it's my honor to represent House District 51A, which is most of Egan, west of 35E, and then all of northern Burnsville. During this past session, I served on the Transportation Committee, Health and Human Service Committee, as well as the Aging and Long-Term Care. I have lived in this community for a long time, and I raised my 3 children here. My initial step into community action was coming over to the City Hall to see about a nice place, nice safe place for my kids and the neighborhood kids to play. Eventually I got put on the Park Commission, and while I was there we did eventually have a referendum that put in a lot of the equipment into our parks, and we also started the 10-year plan, which has served this community very well. I then ran for the City Council and served 8 years on that, and became totally immersed in transportation, which is still my very most passionate thing to be about.
Thank you.
More to come.
All right. Welcome, Pat. We'll go to you next.
Well, thank you. I want to thank the Chamber for giving me this opportunity and giving all of this opportunity. My name is Pat Hammond, and I am running for House District 51B. I am running because I am dissatisfied with the direction of the country, in particular the fiscal side of the country. A widening gap between the rich and the poor, historically low labor participation rate, loss of real income for families, and I believe that these problems are being caused in part because of government policies. I am a newcomer. I have never held political office before in my life, not even so much as a dog catcher. So I think I bring a very unique perspective based on my life experiences that I think that I can bring to bear on these problems, which I believe are the tax burdens and regulatory burdens that have been placed on small businesses. If I am elected, that will be my highest priority, is to relieve those burdens. More to come.
Thank you. And finally, Lori.
Thank you. And good evening, I'm Lori Halverson. I am the state representative from Egan, proud to represent Egan for the past 2 terms. Prior to that, I was proud to serve as the volunteer chair of the Egan Parks and Recreation Commission. I served on the Egan Foundation Board of Directors and volunteered a lot within District 196. My priority has always been community first. As a volunteer and as your state representative, people above partisanship and politics has been my priority. And it's been that way because Egan has built a really strong and wonderful community. And it's because we come together to solve problems. And that's the value that I've been working to take to St. Paul. I'm very proud to say that I've built a reputation at the Capitol as somebody who works across the aisle, somebody who is very solutions oriented and works to get the job done. My record includes working hard for our investments that are important to our community, like education, and balancing that with fiscal prudence, including the fact that I led the charge on tax cuts for our businesses here in Eagan. Look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you. We have received many really excellent questions this evening, so thank you to our audience for submitting those. We'll start with one from the audience right up front, and we'll start with Sandra on this one. What are your top 2 legislative issues, and what do you plan to do about them?
The top 2 have to be transportation and education. Transportation impacts absolutely every facet of our lives, whether it's getting to school, to work, to the hospital, whatever. And to me, the fact that we were not able to pass a comprehensive transportation bill this year is just incredibly disappointing. And that, to me, has to be done next year. I mean, MnDOT is about 20 years behind at least in projects. We need to be able to do stable funding. Education, and that's why we have businesses that are so successful in Minnesota, and why businesses come to Minnesota is because we have a good education system. It's important that not only we maintain it, but we also expand it. I think we need to do more for preschool, as well as the huge thing that needs to be solved very shortly is the incredible problem with student debt. It's at a crisis stage, both to people going to college and those who are dealing with the payment of those loans now.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, actually, my top priority is also transportation, education as well, but I think I have a different approach. The reason we did not have a comprehensive transportation plan this last session is because it was held up because of light rail. That is the only reason that our transportation bills have been held up, is because some people want that train so badly that they will forget about all the other roads and bridges that can be built, not just in our community, but throughout the state. So a train that's going to cost up to $2 billion and then in perpetuity cost $40 million a year in operation costs is the reason why we don't have a transportation bill. That's why the bonding bill, it was ambushed in the Senate. Now I'll move on to my other point, education. We need local control of education, need the local school boards making the decisions without all the state and federal mandates. I think at the legislature, we can reduce those mandates.
Thank you. We'll move on to Lori and Pat. And Lori, please go first on this question.
Thank you, Vicki. It's hard to narrow things down to the top 2, but I would start with tackling the rising cost of healthcare in our state. Minnesota has to be a leader in healthcare. We have some of the great innovative policies that the country has seen, and we need to build on that to create more transparency in how we price prescription drugs, because those prices are getting out of control and making healthcare affordable for our citizens. Additionally, we need to get to other root causes, including mental health, that are driving costs within our system, because we essentially are treating crisis and we're not doing preventative work. And that's how we can couple ways how we can make our system more efficient. In addition, when I'm door to door, education is the top of the list in Eagan. And I'm so proud to say that. And it doesn't matter party, it doesn't matter persuasion, it doesn't matter if you've got kids in school. People want to see strong schools here in Eagan. And I've been really proud to partner with our schools to help folks from pre-K to high school be ready.
Thank you. Pat?
Yes, my top 2 priorities will be tax and regulation relief for small businesses and healthcare. The tax and small business relief, you have to realize that 60% of our economy is made up of small businesses. And because of those burdens, they are not thriving. They are not growing. And due to their innovation, the future of our economy is at risk. As far as healthcare, that's also part and parcel to what is happening with the small businesses because of the costs. As Lori has stated, it's been very expensive for small businesses to try to catch up with the Affordable Care Act. I might point out that the Affordable Care Act was based on some very loose assumptions, and because of those loose assumptions didn't come true, they have contributed tremendously. So one of my top priorities will be to try to understand this healthcare mess that we're in right now and try to find solutions that would be favorable to all Minnesotans.
Thank you. Jim, we'll turn to you next.
Well, my top priority, I guess, is actually honest and integrity representation. We have to be sure that we understand what has happened in the last couple of years. I'm going to make a correction here before I say anything about what my priorities are, but we passed a transportation bill. We passed a bonding bill. The Senate passed the bonding bill at the end of the session, 53-13. This is not an issue that was partisan. It was a matter of the House Speaker refused to take a vote on it. It would have passed him. Now, my priorities are to get that transportation bill back up in front of people. We need to get the tax bill fixed and get that passed. We need to get a bonding bill put together. The bonding bill was really a mess. In fact, I have it right here. This is the page of omissions and errors that was in that bonding bill. It had to be redone by House staff after it was dropped by the House. So that's my priorities.
Victor, priorities?
A couple or two most important issues by far for the people that I talk to in my district are taxes and healthcare. Let me start with taxes. The taxes, record taxes that have been enacted by my opponent and his party are crippling our economy. They are hurting family budgets in this very district. Let me just give you a couple examples. We're the second highest personal income tax rate on the bottom bracket, and we're the third on the top bracket. That's bad, and that's wrong. And I have real solutions for that. Number two issue is healthcare. Governor Dayton himself said that MNsure has been his biggest disappointment. And once again, this is something that my opponent and his party enacted. And there are real pains in this district for families because of MNsure and because of ACA. And I have real solutions for that. We are going in the wrong direction on those issues, and we're going to fix it.
Thank you. We had about 4 of you introduce questions related to transportation, and we also, as a chamber, had a prepared question for transportation. So we'll try to encompass all of those items. How should Minnesota address its unmet transportation needs in the near future, including any funding mechanisms? And also, do you support raising the metro area sales tax to fund investment in transit in the metro area? And we will start the conversation around transportation with Pat.
Transportation needs is very important to any kind of economy. So it would be smart if we could have a sensible direction upon which to base these very important decisions. I would think that I am not in favor of new taxes. I am in favor of better utilizing the revenue streams that we already have. I would also agree with Brad Gerten as far as the light rail goes. I believe it's a voracious user of operating dollars, and I think we can spend that money if we are so willing to spend that money. We can spend it better through the use of buses and through the widening of roads. So those are my comments.
Lori?
Thank you. Transportation is an incredibly important issue to our community as our community continues to change, as we have more seniors living in our community, people who want to age in place, and so meeting those needs is very important. I have to give a tip of the hat to the Dakota County Board of Commissioners for taking on the CTID issue. Dakota County for many years has been a donor county to state and regional transportation and has not really been able to invest right here in Dakota County. And we have seen our Dakota County dollars that were supposed to be dedicated at the state level get taken by previous legislatures and sent to Greater Minnesota. We worked hard to get those dollars coming back into Dakota County. And so making sure that we are addressing our Dakota County needs is a huge priority. To that end, when we hear about transit, I really like the notion of local control. Our local Board of Commissioners said we want to bring those decisions in-house, and I support that.
Great. Victor, we'll go to you next.
Sure. Transportation is a very important issue indeed in our district, and it is very disappointing that we didn't pass that bonding bill with transportation this session. 87%, over 87% of people in our state commute to work using roads and bridges. So you bet it's an important issue. And I think that we need to embrace the philosophy that Minnesotans, and Minnesota employers know where they need to go and they know how to get there. And we need to act based on that priority as far as policy is concerned. So funding, of course, we should have allocated more funding for transportation, for roads and bridges in the bonding bill. Prioritize it. I think every Minnesotan would agree that we should have prioritized it over the new Senate building. And that's just one place where we should have increased our funding for roads and bridges.
Jim?
Well, like I said, we did pass a transportation bill. We passed a comprehensive transportation bill. And, you know, I don't like to pay taxes. I don't like to pay road taxes. I don't like to pay gas taxes. But you know what? We have constituents that want us to increase taxes. I have a handout that has 144 county commissioners that said that. Well, I'm sorry, but if you leave me your email list, I'll send you all of this. CEOs, 12 CEOs in the metro area want us to increase it for comprehensive transportation. Mayors want us to pass transportation increase. And by the way, 2 days ago, we got the Minnesota Inter-County Association is asking for no less than 10 cents a gallon tax increase, and they want to have Dakota County be able to pass a half-cent sales tax. Sandy and I did sponsor that bill last session.
Thank you. Brad?
You can't come in here and talk about having integrity in this process and misrepresent that bonding bill. It was ambushed. If you're watching it on TV live like I was, it was ambushed. The House passed it, it went over to the Senate, they ambushed it. They added an amendment, and there was no time for them to get it over to the other side. And I know everybody wants to blame the Speaker of the House, and they want to throw the Republicans under the bus, but they passed a bonding bill. The Senate could have passed it the way they had agreed on earlier in that day, and we could get into how those discussions and those backroom deals happened, but don't misrepresent what happened. And transportation needs to be funded, and we cannot be spending all this extra money, good money after bad, on projects that is only going to benefit very few people. And that's what light rail does. It only benefits very few people. It's way too expensive. Way too expensive for people who are paying taxes down here. And this is a project that's out in the western burbs, and the other project is in the northern suburbs. What about us down here in south of the metro, or south of the river, south metro area? We need to concentrate on what's going on down here.
Thank you. Sandra?
This is not a minute and a half answer.
It's a minute.
Yeah, we need stable funding for transportation. One of the problems that they were trying to, that in the House, the Republican leadership were trying to do everything with the surplus. To build a road takes a long time, and you need to make sure that there is money there constantly from the beginning to the end. And so we need to find different ways of paying for the roads, and it's not doing a lot of just picking ways of going. And actually, the transportation bill that we passed last year, which was kind of a mini bill, when we were going through, there was like about 40 different times where they were switching money from accounts. Example, they took money out of the ports account. And this keeps going on. So when some of these people are talking about switching money from, doing different things but using the same money, folks, that is not possible if we're going to keep the accounts that we have.
Thank you.
With integrity.
We will have our next question. Again, it's another one from the audience, and we'll start with Jim on this one. Businesses have been leaving Minnesota, especially to South Dakota. What do you propose to stop or slow this trend?
First of all, businesses have not been leaving Minnesota. This is something that's been a canard for 30 years. If you can name me 2 or 3 that went to South Dakota from here, the only reason that a business might go to South Dakota is they're headed to China, because that's low wage over there. Businesses are not leaving. We have high employment here. We have high business rates. We have right at the top. In fact, if you look at metro areas, we are at the top of Fortune 500 companies per capita, which means we have the top Fortune 500 CEOs in the nation also. They're not leaving. This is a canard. It's and I wish that really the chamber would change their attitude on this. Minnesota has been rated by CNBC as the #1 place to do business. We have been laughing. You know, I'm sure none of you use Google, but you could do that, find it out. It is the #1. It's the #1 place to raise a child, and it has a very good economy.
Victor?
Yes, allow me first to debunk some myths here. The Fortune 500 companies that are in Minnesota have been here since 70s. There aren't any new companies. And in fact, businesses are leaving our state, and individuals are leaving our state because of the record high taxes, as I already said, enacted by my opponent and his party. It's a fact. Talking to people in our district, numbers of people that are leaving this state because of those taxes. And I have real solutions for that, ladies and gentlemen. One of them is we need to lower the rates and broaden the base. To do what? To reward work and investment. And we need to increase the transparency of the Minnesota tax system. Business property taxes are disproportionate, and that's a problem for businesses as well. We got to stay competitive not only among other states, but globally. We have a global economy. And with high taxes on businesses that we have right now, we're not competitive. Dayton's own agencies predict
Thank you.
negative growth in jobs.
Lori, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Vicki. Can you repeat the question, please?
I sure can. Businesses have been leaving Minnesota, especially to South Dakota. What do you propose to stop or slow this trend?
Well, the trend in Eagan is business growth, job growth. Dakota County has boasted the lowest unemployment, or one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire state for several years. And the job growth that we're seeing right here in Eagan is jobs that really matter to our community. We are seeing good paying jobs come into our community, in large part because of the investments that we have made as a state. 2 examples. Education. We have one of the best educated workforces that you can ask for right here in our own backyard. We have one of the best school systems in the state. We've got great partnerships with Dakota Technical College and our businesses, and we continue to grow and innovate ways to get high-tech workers into the workforce quickly, which is what our employers are asking for. Additionally, we have made investments through programs like the Minnesota Investment Fund that have brought jobs right here to Eagan. Prime Therapeutics has expanded here, Corvita Medical has expanded here, Bell Laboratories has expanded here, and of course, we're all proud to see the Vikings.
Pat?
9.8. That's the corporate rate that is charged in Minnesota for all corporations. That's 3rd highest in the country. If you add on to that, it's 30% that is for federal. You add on to that the FICA taxes. Pretty soon you get up to about 60%, where every dollar that a company earns ends up going 60 cents goes to the government. That leaves 40 cents on the dollar to try to do what? To try to expand, to try to innovate. It's not enough. We need to cut it. We need to get it down. If you wanted to see real jobs from small businesses grow, I am more for a nice, organic growth of jobs from the bottom instead of trying to do artificial manipulation by policies from the top. I think that is the best way to grow this economy. And I think this is the best way to do that for here in Eagan. I understand we have a wonderful life here in Eagan, but from the door knocking that I've done, there is a lot of concern as far as jobs go.
Sandra?
Thank you. a number of positive things have already been said. Minnesota, we know, is leading the country in so many different areas, including business. We are doing a lot here. And for people to say anything to the contrary, I just don't understand it. There is always room for improvement, no doubt. Things are changing all the time, and we do need to keep on looking ahead to what our businesses need. And certainly I think one of the things that businesses need in Minnesota is more workers at this point. So I think as a state, we need to look forward to try to retrain people so that the jobs that are available, we can have people fill them. And these are good paying jobs. So those are things that we should be doing. But to say Minnesota, everybody is leaving is just total nonsense.
Brad?
I don't think you said everybody was leaving. You said that many businesses are leaving Minnesota, especially some are going to South Dakota. You say that, and we all know that to be a fact. Also, there's some businesses that are leaving to go overseas because of the federal tax rate. As Pat mentioned earlier, that we're at one of the highest corporate tax rate countries, and we're one of the highest corporate tax rate states. So sometimes not necessarily leaving, but also expanding. If you're going to be expanding your business, you're going to be looking for places that's going to be tax friendly, so you can expand. Your dollar will go further. And if you want more of something, you tax it less. If you want less of something, you tax it more. It's simple economics. Talking economics 101 at Ember Hills Community College, you can learn that. It's simple. We got to lower taxes across the board for all our businesses, and that's what's going to grow this economy.
Thank you. Now, moving on to our next question. Would you support a bill preempting Minnesota cities and counties from imposing minimum wages or private sector benefits in excess of state and federal government requirements? Why or why not? We'll start with Pat.
Minimum wage is probably one of the most explosive issues in politics today. And the problem is, it was best said by Jerry Brown when he signed the legislation for minimum wage in California. He said, this makes no sense policy-wise, it makes no sense economic, but it makes wonderful sense politically. Direct quote. I don't know if I got the exact words right, but the problem is that there's a ripple effect when you do a minimum wage. A ripple effect that makes the employer actually either reduce hours or eliminate employment. I cannot in good conscience say that I want a minimum wage and stand in front of somebody and say that this was going to benefit them, knowing that they're either going to lose their job or they're going to have reduced hours in the future. I cannot do that for political purposes, and I won't do it for fiscal purposes, so I am definitely against the minimum wage. Thank you.
Lori, I'm going to repeat the question. Would you support a bill preempting Minnesota cities and counties from imposing minimum wages or private sector benefits in excess of state and federal government requirements? Why or why not?
Thank you for repeating the question for clarity, because we are talking about local preemption, and local preemption always gives me heartburn because I really think that we're represented best at the local level. The fact is that the closer we are to government, the bigger impact it has in our lives, and I think that our citizens want to have a voice in that. However, there are times when ideology does not always make the right public policy, and in this case, I would be inclined to support the preemption bill. Again, I hate even hearing me say that because I really support our local government, and I support our city of Eagan and the way that it serves our citizens. However, this is an issue where statewide policy would probably be a better way to go because we don't want business owners having to deal with different municipalities' laws. That tends to be a real challenge for our small businesses, and so I would lean towards supporting that particular policy.
Thank you. Brad?
Absolutely. I would support a preemption bill 100%. I think it is necessary. Now, City of Eagan, the Eagan City Council is not trying to impose a minimum wage here in Eagan, and it's not happening over on the other side of the district in Burnsville either, which is good. But we see cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul, and it's not just their own minimum wage, but now they're imposing sick time rules and separate family leave laws that have to be funded by the private employer. And on top of it, they're requiring these companies to provide these benefits to employees who may just do business within the city for a certain amount of hours per year. So if you're a delivery driver here in Eagan that makes deliveries to Minneapolis, maybe even St. Paul, what rules are they gonna have to fall under? You know, if they're gonna have to get sick time in Minneapolis and then sick time in St. Paul imposed on businesses that are down here in Eagan. It doesn't make any sense for these city councils to be imposing those restrictions on companies.
Sandra?
Thank you. As a former city council member, I can tell you we certainly don't like to see one city compete against another, whether it's the clean air or whether it's the minimum wage. I can tell you, though, that I think because there's a huge income gap in this country that needs to be addressed, and I do understand why the cities are trying to get livable wages for their people, because so much of the money is going to help the people that are just not able to make it. But I guess I would have a really hard time signing on to the bill, because I just think there are very few cities that would probably go ahead with that. And if they do, it will probably be at their own peril, I think. So,
Thank you. Victor?
Yes, I would support it. I think it's just some cities are trying to go around the state law, and I don't support that. But since I have a minute, I'm going to take my time to follow to build on what I didn't finish. Governor Dayton's agencies are predicting negative growth in job creation for the next few years. This is common knowledge that our economy is mediocre in the nation. And so this goes back to the problems that we've created for ourselves, our career politicians have created for us, is high taxes, one of the highest in the nation. People are leaving, businesses are leaving. Commercial property taxes disproportionate, and I think we need to steadily decrease that. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I have real solutions, and we're not doing as well as we're told by politicians.
Jim?
Well, thank you. I would like to hear some of those real solutions other than just promises.
Absolutely.
This is not a simple issue because we don't have broad across the state law. And so, and what you were saying is that in some cases they're looking at if a person is doing business in one of the cities that would pass this, that they would have to meet those requirements. I think that's just patently unconstitutional. I don't think it would last long at all. So I don't think that those would be passed. I would not support a preemption bill right now for a couple of reasons. One of them is that the cities that I represent here are not inclined to have the state tell them what to do. They don't like that. And the second thing is that I think we need to have some kind of statewide law first. Then I would probably support a preemption if we had a statewide law that exceeded the city laws.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, we'll start with Sandra on this one, and it's one from the audience. Do you support or oppose allowing stores to sell liquor on Sundays, and why?
I guess we know why I got that one. This, to me, is a really controversial issue. Minnesota's always had that prohibition, and I believe in the near future it will change just because we are trying to do things to help our new brewery industry. But the reason I voted no this time is I happen to be sitting next to Representative Dave Pinto, and he's read a report put out by the Health and Human Services. And for every $1 of income coming in from alcohol, the estate spends $17. For those of you who have friends or families that have been impacted by alcoholism, it does incredible damage to our communities, to our families, and it's been really tough for me to to deal with that issue, to do anything to support more alcoholism. And I understand the rights, and I can tell you my kids are telling me they want me to vote.
Thank you.
For
Brad?
the repeal.
There's no reason why a business should be told when and when they can't be open. Sunday sales, Representative Mason said that in Minnesota, we've always had it. That's not a reason to keep it. Right now, over in Hudson and those other border cities, they're making the money on Sundays. Wisconsin's getting those tax dollars from those alcohol sales. There's a liquor store over there, his busiest day of the year, Super Bowl Sunday, and most of the license plates in his parking lot are Minnesota plates. Now, I know there's a lot of small businesses that are concerned of spreading the sales out. They're gonna make the same amount of sales, but it's gonna take 7 days instead of just the 6, but they have the option of staying closed. They also have the option of closing on a Monday, like one of my favorite Chinese restaurants does. You're not required to be open on a Sunday. If you want to be open, great, you should be. And the state has no business telling a small business owner, or any business owner for that matter, when they cannot be open.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, thank you. That, again, we're at a complicated question here. You have to imagine yourself as a small business owner that has built your business based on a model that has been in place for a long time. And I have visited every liquor store in Egan and Burnsville, and I've asked these smaller owners, okay, do you support that? Not one of the owner-operated liquor stores will tell you that they support that. And I support being able to buy on a Sunday a legal product. The problem is we have constituents, and those constituents are actually saying, no, we don't want it. And what they'll say is they will go out of business because it's another day for only a small amount of increase in sales. So I will support it. If someone wants to bring me 2 of the smaller liquor store owners, bring them to me and have them tell me that I support it, and I'll vote for it.
Victor?
Yes, this is a simple issue to me. It's not complicated. It all comes down to freedom, ladies and gentlemen. Freedom that my family came here for, as I have said before. And this is a rhetorical question. Who should decide when a business should stay open and closed? The government or the business? The obvious answer is the business. And it's not the constituents that don't want to buy liquor on Sundays. They do. There's a difference between the constituents and liquor stores. But since I have some time, and I would like to go over some of my real solutions that I've been asked to go over. And I have very limited time, so I cannot go into depth, and I'm sure you can find our information on the website later or somewhere else. But taxes is lower the tax rates and broaden the base, okay? Healthcare. Increased competition and affordability. It's been a disaster. Venture has been a disaster. We need to fix it. We need to fix it now. And expanding from state market to a regional
Victor.
market is another solution.
Lori? Sunday liquor sales.
Thank you for bringing us back on topic. I did not support the expansion of Sunday liquor sales for one simple reason, because every single business owner I talked to in this community said, please don't. And they said it with fear in their eyes. They didn't want to close their businesses. They didn't want to go out of business. And when you think about Main Street retail, think about what a challenge it is. Where's your Main Street hardware store? Where's your Main Street clothing store? They're few and far between, folks, because competition has really edged them out. We have Main Street liquor retail in Minnesota for one simple reason, because of the regulations that are in place that require a level playing field between big box stores like MGM, Target, Cub, and our small mom and pops who are investing in our community, raising their kids here, living here, donating to our local nonprofit organizations. That's who I'm fighting for, and that's who I'll continue to fight for.
Thank you. Pat?
I have been asked this question several times while door knocking, and my answer to them is always the same. I would go with what the constituents want. I really don't have a very heavy opinion on one way or another. As far as, I mean, the big box stores are open 6 days a week as well as the small mom and pop. So another day, I don't think that's going to hurt very much. if I would err on the side of freedom. I would say that if you don't want to be open on Sundays, then don't be open on Sundays. If you do want to be open on Sundays, then do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next and likely final question this evening before closing comments. We will start with Victor on this. What is the most important thing our state can do to help close the achievement gap in our schools and ensure Minnesota's businesses are prepared, have a prepared workforce for the future?
Wow, that's a lot packed into one question, into 1 minute. Impossible to answer. Education is very important. I have a 2-year-old, and I want the best for him, as you want the best for your children. And the achievement gap is the worst in this state. 50%, about 50% of minorities graduate, of African Americans graduate in our state, and that's a tragedy. That is wrong. It is sad. We got to go to local control. We got to go to freedom. We got to go to competition. And competition is a good thing. Competition promotes innovation. It breeds innovation. And that's what we have to do with schools too. So if it came down to that one basic principles, that's where I would go to. But of course, it's a very complex issue. And would love to have some time, more time later to talk about that.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you. I'm endorsed by Education Minnesota. I've been involved in education from when I was there even, and with my children from the time that they entered kindergarten until they finished college. I know what we are facing, and it is very serious. The first thing that we have to do, very first thing, is we have to get control of class sizes. I stopped to see an old friend at an old friend's house on Cliff Road, and she's a chemistry and physics teacher at Burnsville High School, and she said she has 43 kids in her physics class. Now, there isn't anyone who is able to do justice to kids with 43 kids in their class. My wife had 40 kids in her German class. These are class sizes that are just not doable in this day and age, and we should not be continuing with that. There's many other things, and as far as the gap goes, what we need to do is get young kids into school early.
Thank you. Brad?
I just had one question based on that, the last one about representatives and senators going to local businesses and asking them, did you ever go and ask them how they felt about the minimum wage increase? Because I think that would put more fear in their business than Sunday liquor sales, because I think that does more harm than anything to a small business. But getting on the education point, closing the achievement gap, we need to have more school choice, more options for parents to send their children, whether it's charter schools, subsidizing private school educations for those who can't afford it, to give them that option and make sure that those public schools are a part of the competition. You know, government usually doesn't have competition. So if you're endorsed by Education Minnesota, you're not endorsed for the students, you're endorsed by the teachers, in the teacher's interest, not the student's interest. So it's important to put the money in the classroom for the students. Thank
Sandra?
you.
Thank you very much. This is a critical issue, and to me, it's a community issue. I think at this point, we're probably placing way too much responsibility on the teachers themselves, and they are, they go to college to be teachers. They don't go to college to address a number of other issues. About a year or so, I think it was in 13-14, where we actually are trying to get mental health help into the schools. I think that's something that needs to be done. And I was really very pleased last year when we did the education bill that we had funding for supplemental staff in the schools. And my thought today, there are so many kids with behavior issues, with health issues. Those are not the responsibilities of the teachers. We need additional staff to be dealing with these issues. That's part of it. But our business, and I think all of our businesses are helping partnership with the schools. That's another thing that needs to, we could maybe do more with that, but it is happening, and I'm really pleased to see that.
Thank you. Pat, we'll go to you next.
It's a very complex issue. I think one that we may be placing an undue burden on state policy to try to solve. Because I believe that the basic reason that there is an achievement gap isn't so much in funding or class sizes or anything like that. It's a basic breakdown of what I would call the traditional family in the St. Paul and Minneapolis areas. 70% of children are born without knowing who their father is. And I think that deep systemic problem is probably what is driving the the education gap. And until we address that, we can have all sorts of wonderful solutions on this state level. But I don't think they're going to do very much good until you get those systemic problems addressed.
Lori?
Thank you. With regard to the achievement gap, we've taken some very important steps in the last 2 years to address that. It's a critical issue, and ensuring that our students are graduating with a top quality education is vitally important. I was really proud to get passed in a bipartisan manner in the GOP education budget, the school readiness funding. It was the first increase in school readiness funding in 20 years in Minnesota. And science shows us again and again and again that if kids are ready to learn when they enter kindergarten, they are more likely to graduate, they're more likely to go to college, and they're more likely to get a good paying job when they graduate. So we took all that data and we put it into a great bill that District 196 helped lead and helped get passed. In addition, we passed all-day kindergarten, and it's something that the citizens of this community have been really grateful for. There was a question about whether or not we were going to get enrollment. We got 99.99, I think 6 kids didn't enroll the first year in all-day K. It's been very important in closing the achievement gap.
Thank you. We've had several questions this evening that unfortunately we did not get time to ask, but I would encourage you to connect with the candidates following this forum and up until election season. So we will now move towards closing comments, and we will start with Sandra.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about the opportunity to continue serving the people of Eagan and Burnsville. There's still so much to be done, and actually from this year, from this session alone, we still need to worry about the bonding bill and a comprehensive transportation bill. But there's a lot of issues that we haven't talked about, homelessness for one. So I ask for your support, and I have a voting record, and I know that if you check my voting record, I am willing to vote to get things done. I'm not one of those people that just sits there and just does nothing the way we did this. Yeah, as I said, this year to me was a disaster because we didn't get major bills passed. I believe it, and I know the people in my district expect us to get our work done, get it done on time, and I have a record to prove that. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Brad?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come here this evening. One of the subjects we really didn't discuss was more on the fiscal issues of business and education. But I'm a probation officer, as I mentioned, and one of the big issues that we're facing in every county in the state is the mental health crisis. I know that's been touched on a little bit. And jails are being used as just mental health facilities because there's nowhere else for them to go. And these correctional facilities and these jails that the sheriff departments are running do not have the capabilities or the resources to treat those mental illnesses. And most of their crimes are what we call the quality of life crimes, your loiterings and drinking in public, those types. We need to look at where the problem is and put resources so we can solve that problem, because we're throwing more money at a problem and it's not getting solved.
Thank you, Brad. Lori, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Vicki, and thanks to the audience, to the Dakota County Regional Chamber, to folks watching at home and online. It's been a good discussion. And when I first ran for office 4 years ago now, it was clear to me that the voters of Eagan were really fed up with the partisan gridlock, partisan bomb throwing that had become hallmarks of government. And it was starting to seep into our culture here in Minnesota. And partisan bomb throwing has no place in problem solving. We need to work together to get the job done. And I'm proud to say that that's been the way that I've worked at the Capitol. I've reached across the aisle to see how we can work together to solve problems that people are bringing to me. I've also worked with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to lift up what's really working. And that's what I'll continue to do. I'll continue to fight for our great schools. I'll continue to work on policies that bring good paying jobs to Eagan. I'll continue to make sure that we're addressing the high cost of health care, that we're working to bring the cost of college down so that we can do the best for our families here in Eagan and Minnesota.
Thank you. Pat?
I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank the online audience as well. I think this has been very instructive, and I love it when we talk. It's wonderful. I am new to politics, as I repeated. I think I can bring a very unique perspective to the problems that face us in the state and in policy. I think that far too much has been a top-down solution for some of these great challenges that we face. I would like to see more of a from the bottom of grassroots solutions to these problems. I think in that way we can better address them. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Jim?
Well, thank you, and I want to thank you again for holding this. The criticism is that these are subjects that we meet on in the Senate for hours sometimes. We have a lot of things that we talk about, and it takes a lot of time to discuss them and sometimes to convince the people that are on our own side or on the other side to support something. So it's very difficult to mash something into a minute. And I guess I encourage anyone that has further questions to come and ask me about it. In fact, even the one about the bonding bill. But you know, I'm going to let some of my endorsements speak for me too. I'm endorsed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, by Education Minnesota, the Nurses Association, Small Business Minnesota, Conservation Minnesota, the Clean Water Action, United Transportation Union, Take Action Minnesota, Planned Parenthood, SEIU, IBEW, and of course the Democratic Party. These are the people that are behind me. These are the people that I have satisfied with my work in the Senate.
Thank you, Jim. Victor?
I am glad to be here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. We are clearly on the wrong path in Minnesota. On taxes, on healthcare, unarguably with Minsher, education, the gap, and I have real solutions. I am clearly the best candidate in this race because I have real solutions to these problems. Opportunity scholarship for schools, for education, that's just one little solution that I would offer up. Healthcare, we need to increase competition. We need patients to have control over their healthcare, over their own healthcare. Taxes, we need to stop driving businesses and individuals out of the state. And I'm an immigrant who came to this state. I'm a small business owner. I bring the fresh perspective to the legislature, not career politician. I'm not a career politician. And so I want your endorsement. I want the only endorsement. That's your endorsement in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. On behalf of the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce, it's my sincere thanks to each of the candidates for taking a bit more time to share with you your views on issues important to our region. Thank you to the audience for being with us, both here live and on television. We hope you feel a bit more educated and engaged on the issues. And finally, this forum will be available through replay on Eagan TV, as well as at www.dcrchamber.com. While you're on our website, please check out the 2016 voter guide. And finally, don't forget to vote on November 8th. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.